Welcome to this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and my guest this week is the Deputy Commissioner of the Big East Conference and highly successful Vince Nicastro. Vince, welcome to On the Fly.
Thanks, Gene. Great to be here with you. Interestingly, I was in preparation for this, I was reflecting upon our relationship, and believe it or not, it's been 30 years. I started at Villanova when you hired me there in the spring of 1994. So,
Oh my gosh.
I know. So,
Is that right?
yeah,
It's been
yeah. So
30
it's
years.
30 years.
I
And
remember you were working at St. Joe's
mhm.
and you were working in tickets and marketing, and you had a lot of different jobs. And I remember saying to you, if you would come and straighten up our ticket office, um, take 2 or 3 years, then I'd make you an associate and we would, give you a lot more administrative duties. And look where you are now.
And it's exactly what happened. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity you gave me there. And it really did change the trajectory of my career. So it's great to be with you this morning.
Well, let's talk about your move to the conference. Having sat in the athletic director's chair has to be a huge, advantage for you over a lot of other people that are in conference offices that have never been on a college campus.
Yeah, I like to think so. And when the Big East was restarted in 2013 and Val Ackerman was hired as commissioner, a lot of people don't know this, but she had to rebuild that staff from scratch. We were left with the Big East name, but really nothing else. The staff was not there. We had no office space, no infrastructure at all. So she came in and did an incredible job and continues to do an incredible job leading the conference. But one of the things she had to do was build her staff. And I think one of the things she recognized early on was she had come from a professional background, the NBA and WNBA, and didn't have a lot of campus leadership experience on the staff. So that's where we had a few discussions about me trying to serve that role. And hopefully she thinks I've done that well. And, I do think that I've been able to be a great resource, not only for her and our team, but for the athletic directors in our league, who, as we're, facing challenging issues, tough issues, can at least have some sense of empathy for what they're facing on their campuses as we approach trying to solve those problems.
So, Vince, in putting together your staff, what do you do on a daily basis as the deputy commissioner? I know you're involved in everything, but what's been the main focus for you?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things, Gene. One is really trying to manage the day-to-day operations of our team, right? So it allows Val in her role as commissioner to be a little more outward facing, right? Dealing with our external constituents, sort of looking around corners, and me and serving the role of trying to just make sure that, the trains are running on time.
Yeah.
At the same time, she's involved me in all of the major strategic initiatives, right? So things like membership issues. When we brought UConn back into the conference, I was there every step of the way and in those discussions with the UConn leadership team, our television deal.
Tell us about your new deal, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it really is. We when we relaunched the league back in 2013, Fox Sports was just coming into the marketplace with FS1, and so it was fortuitous for us that they saw us as a premium property as they were launching FS1, and Fox has really grown into a really significant player in the collegiate rights space over the last 10 or 12 years. So they've been a great partner for us. So we decided early on that we felt like we should do everything we can to extend our relationship with Fox going forward, which we started working on last winter and consummated this summer. So we've extended that agreement 6 years after this year through 2031. And Fox has brought along with them two partners in this arrangement, one being NBC Peacock. So it's our first foray into streaming, which a lot of other leagues have already been involved with. NBC Peacock is getting involved in streaming across a variety of premium properties in a big way. So we're thrilled to be partnering with them. And then also TNT Sports. So the WBD Turner family is now getting a little more integrated into college sports as well, aside from the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So going forward, we'll be represented by Fox, NBC Peacock, and Turner. So we feel really good about the distribution, the national exposure, and of course, the resources that come along with that to help us and our schools fund their programs.
Vince, there are some young people out there that may not understand what streaming is. Can you explain that?
Sure. Yeah. The traditional distribution platforms going back a ways were over the air broadcast television, right? And then cable or linear, as we like to say. Streaming services are really, distributing through broadband through the internet. And those types of services now, with the decline in the traditional cable bundle and cable industry in terms of subscribers, feels like it's being picked up by the streamers. And a lot of distributors have really invested a lot in their streaming platforms to distribute live sports content. The NFL and the pro leagues have gotten involved with Amazon and with Peacock, with Twitter a few years ago, actually, the distribution of live content. So it's becoming a much larger portion of the portfolio of sports rights. And for us, we've actually started our relationship with Peacock this year, and we're off to a good start. But I think going forward, it'll be a larger component of all sports rights or sports properties distribution strategies as the streaming component continues to grow and get better and become, I think, more acceptable to the actual viewers who are consuming this content in different ways than they were even 5 or 10 years ago.
Talk to us about the regular season. I'm reading in the papers and listening on sports shows that there's a lot of athletic directors out there that would like to see the tournament expanded. There are others that are saying, wait a minute, if we go any higher than the number that we have now, what is the regular season going to mean? Other people say, well, when a 19 and 13 team got into the NCAA tournament, either last year or the year before, I forget which one it was, what does the regular season mean? What's your take on the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a tough call. I mean, it is one of the best postseason championship events in the world, right? I mean, it just captures everyone's imagination in the month of March. So a lot of people would think it's almost perfect, right? So don't mess with perfect. It's really good. I do think you could make an argument that there are a lot of really deserving teams because the quality of play is so good across the country that are left out of the tournament. And that's part of the beauty of it. And we were affected by this last year, not in a positive way, right? We had some really deserving teams that were on the bubble and didn't make it, but that creates a lot of the excitement around the tournament, right? Who gets in, who doesn't get in, who was snubbed by the committee, who got the best seed and who didn't, right? It creates, I think, a lot of attention from people who may not follow the sport any other time of the year other than in March. But I think it's probably prudent for us as an industry to take a look at the tournament format. And if there is a case to be made for expansion, a very small expansion of the tournament. There was some discussion years ago about going to 96, and I certainly would not support that. But if we went from 68 to 72 or even to 76 and created some, first fours to start the tournament, I think that's worth evaluating. And I think for a conference like ours, it probably would benefit us on balance because I do think we'll have strong enough teams that are getting left out of the tournament or just shy of the tournament who then may have access to March Madness. And as you know, such an inordinate amount of attention placed on whether you make the tournament or not as a program. You can be a superb basketball coach, have a superb basketball program, and if somehow you don't get in for a year or two, people look at you differently, like you haven't really succeeded. It's not fair, but I do think expanding a little bit may provide some additional opportunities for schools to enjoy the benefits of being in that great event.
In past years, the Big East has gotten 6 and 7 teams in the tournament. Last year, I know there were a lot of people that felt like St. John's and Providence and Seton Hall were deserving of being in the tournament. And I agree with you. A season seems to be, to a lot of people, did you make the tournament or not? So I certainly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, so it's a tough call because you don't want to mess with something that's really good, maybe close to perfect, but I do think it's worth evaluating whether we should expand. But if we do it, we need to do it thoughtfully and probably incrementally and not overexpand.
Vince, your tournament in New York, the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden in New York, is really, really special. Haven't been a part of it for a number of years. It was something that I really missed. Can you tell people what it's like at tournament time in Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, it really is, and obviously I'm biased because I've been around it for 30 years now. But when Dave Gavitt, had the foresight to move that tournament to the world's most famous arena in Midtown Manhattan, it just changed the game for the Big East Conference. I mean, it really is the greatest conference tournament atmosphere in the country. New York gets captivated by it, which is really incredible. And that Friday night semifinal, it's electric, and it always is, regardless of who's playing in those games. So it's something that's we think is one of the critical pieces and components to the success of the Big East. We've been there 40 plus years now. We extended that agreement recently to get to 50 years. So we'll be celebrating 50 years at Madison Square Garden. So it's the longest running conference tournament at a single site in the country, in the best city in the country, in the world's most famous arena. I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that for the fans, for the programs, and for the players. Can you imagine being a young player and Friday night in the semifinals in the sold out Madison Square Garden? I mean, that may be the highlight of your career as a college player. So it's really special.
There's been so much expansion, and the expansion has been mainly because of football. But if you look at the Big East teams, the Providences and the Seton Halls and St. John's, they have played against each other for 50 years. And to play each other twice in a season, you just get some rivalries that you don't get in some of the larger conferences where you can't play each other as often.
Yeah, that's one of the other pillars, I think, to what we've tried to accomplish here in the last 10 or 12 years as we've reconfigured into, back to a more basketball centric conference, is we've maintained the double round robin. We think that's really important so that those rivalries are either perpetuated or with our Midwest schools, we've started a lot of rivalries across between the East and the Midwest. Play twice a year and then maybe again at the Garden. We think that really has helped either reinvigorate rivalries or start new rivalries between our schools. So we're going to hang on to that double round robin as long as we can because we do think it's unique to our situation.
We have in football Power 4 leagues. Yet in basketball, we say that we have a Power 5 because the Big East will always have a place at the basketball table. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, and we agree with that assessment. We're in a very unique situation because college athletics, as you know, has become a football-driven ecosystem. And that's happened over time, but, it's more than ever, the football leagues are driving decision-making and resource generation and things of that nature. But the Big East has really been able to carve out a space to where we're considered one of the power leagues in the sport of basketball. And that's our focus each and every day, is to try to maintain that position as an elite basketball league with teams capable of winning national championships. And we've won 4 of the last 8, 2 by Villanova and 2 by UConn. So we think that we've been able to prove that we're one of those elite leagues.
Those are pretty good numbers.
Pretty good numbers. Pretty good numbers. But, it's a battle every day. I mean, the landscape is changing. It's changing rapidly, maybe more rapidly than it ever has. But I'll give credit to our schools. They've been really focused on the fundamentals of being very intentional and focused about competing and investing in the sport of basketball, how important it is to those institutions, which you're well aware of. And, at each and every turn where we've been challenged, particularly over the last 10 or 12 years, our schools have really responded. When we've had coaching changes, we've added high-level Final Four Hall of Fame coaches to our portfolio. We may have the best lineup of coaches in the country. When NIL became a thing and our schools were trying to figure out, like the rest of the country, what that meant, our schools were very proactive in trying to figure out how to maintain competitiveness in their recruitment and retention of players through NIL programs. And they're going to do the same thing with the house settlement. They're going to be very aggressive and proactive in ensuring that they have the resources in place to attract and retain the best talent. And I think more than that, just we've talked about a relationship with the Garden and our national TV deal. All those things have really come together for us, and we think positions us well to remain one of those power players in the sport of basketball going forward. And then furthermore, I think the sport of basketball really, is at the fabric of our schools, right? Some schools are football schools, some schools are hockey schools, some schools are academic focused. Our schools, by and large, understand the tradition, the influence, the importance of having a successful college basketball program on their campuses. And those leaders on those campuses have done a great job of doubling down and leaning into the sport of basketball. And it's been a successful strategy so far, but we know that each and every day is going to be a challenge for us in this environment.
Well, you sure have done a great job. When I was a director of athletics, I thought it was important to take our teams to the Great Alaska Shootout. I thought, when would our players ever get a chance to go to Alaska? We played in the Maui Classic. When would a lot of our players ever have an opportunity to go there? We went to Puerto Rico. We played in a lot of preseason tournaments that were really learning experiences for the student athletes as well. I see those losing their flair, so to speak, and less teams wanting to go to those.
Yeah, I think it's a trend. And our schools have been talking about maybe moving away from those opportunities as well. And I think part of that is the changing nature of whether it's NIL or the direct revenue share, that going to those events as great experiences as they may be, culturally and educationally and otherwise, I think our schools and schools around the country, not just ours, are focused on trying to generate resources to fund the revenue sharing programs that are coming to us starting next year if the House settlement gets final approval. So a little bit of a shift in focus here to playing more home games, more home and homes, maybe some single game neutral site events where the economics are simply better than taking a long trip to either the Bahamas or Maui or some other program. I do think our schools will continue to invest in summer foreign tours, which again, the cultural and educational aspects of that I think are really important. But the in-season model, I think, is you're probably likely to see a shift here in the coming years.
We're out of time on this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and I want to thank our guest, Vince Nicastro, for doing a wonderful job and telling us about the Big East and about the coming basketball season. Thanks for your time this time, and we'll see you next time.